Hello, everybody, and welcome to this H-1B webinar. We are just going to give it a few moments to allow a few more participants to join, and we will be getting started very shortly. Thank you so much to everybody for attending today. We really appreciate it. So we'll give it a few more minutes. I see people are joining. So thank you so much. Yeah, there have been a lot of changes to the H-1B, and that's what we'll be talking about today. So I'm really excited to have you all joining, and I see that several more people have joined in, so welcome. We're just going to give it a little bit more time because there may be a few more people who are coming in and who will be joining us in just a few minutes. And we'll be making all of the slides available to everybody after today's presentation. So thank you so much for registering. And we'll be happy to provide you with the PDF of the slides so you have those materials available. And we will be reserving some time for Q&A at the end. Fantastic. So we will be getting started, and just one second, getting our slides going. Thank you so much to everybody for making the time to be here today. We are super excited to have you here, and let's do this. It's 12:03. We have many participants, and if more people come, they're more than welcome to. And you're welcome to share any questions that you may have throughout the presentation. Zoom does provide a question and answer window, so I will be able to see your questions that you type during the presentation. And we'll also reserve some time for more questions and answers at the end. But with that, let's get started. Welcome to this webinar about H-1B season fiscal year 2020, everything that we currently know about what the changes to the H-1B system are going to look like. And I have some exciting new updates. So if you attended any of our seminars or events in the last month or so, there is new information that's hot off the press. So I wanted to just tell you a little bit about ourselves here at Alcorn Immigration Law before we dive in. My name is Sophie Alcorn, and I am a certified specialist immigration attorney. I practice here in the state of California. We're in Mountain View in Silicon Valley. And our law firm, Alcorn Immigration Law, has maintained a really high success rate lately, even with all the changes you hear about in immigration law. And I chalk that up to our mission. We are here to overcome borders and really connect the world. And I often ask questions, to my clients about if there weren't any borders and you could do anything you wanted, what would it be? And so we're trying to help make it a borderless world. I'm super excited to introduce you to our team. We have wonderful people who are working together to support our clients. Oh, this is me. I don't really know what to say about that, except I'm Sophie. I want to be accessible to everybody, and please ask me questions. I do this because my dad was an immigration lawyer and my mom's an immigrant from Germany, and so I see firsthand, I've seen my whole life firsthand everything that it takes to create a new life in another country, and I have so much respect for that process, and I love being in Silicon Valley where we get to help people who are working in such interesting companies with amazing technologies that are really changing the world. I'm also super proud to announce my associate attorney, Mina Kashari. She's also participating in the webinar today, and we may be able to hear. There's Amina. Hi, Amina. How are you today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
You're welcome. I'm so glad you could join us. And everybody, Amina is a wonderful, wonderful immigration attorney. She has so much compassion, and I just love being able to work with people like Amina who really understand where our clients are coming from. So would you like to say just a couple of words about yourself, please?
Sure, really excited to have joined Alcorn. It's an exciting team. We're so happy to be able to help everyone achieve their goal, obviously. So a little bit about myself. I am a graduate of the University of Houston and Texas Southern University. I actually am an immigrant myself. I immigrated at the age of 12 from Iraq. So I come from a family of immigrants, and this is very personal to me. And so I love connecting to other people who have, that sort of story, coming to America for a better life. And I'm just happy to be able to help.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Amina. And Amina and I will both be fielding questions together at the end of this webinar. So thanks. We have a big team and we're growing. I would say, we hire people for their legal knowledge, compassion, strategic thinking, and integrity. And I'm really proud of the team that we're building. We're growing fast, and what really also links everybody together is that we're almost always either immigrants ourselves or children of immigrants or married to immigrants. So it's personal for all of us. Just to throw in a little something before we get into all of the nitty gritty, this is my great grandfather. This is how my family's immigration story in the United States got started. This was his certificate of citizenship. It was created in 1942. And you can't see it, but it's actually behind that poster in this room that I'm sitting in, the original. But he was a Sicilian immigrant. He lived in Chicago in the 20s, and he was probably involved in the mob during Prohibition with illegal liquor runs in and out of Canada. And his distinguishing marks, if you can see, there's kind of a gray rectangle around it on top of this thing, but his distinguishing or distinctive marks are that his right arm was bent and his thumb was broken. So thank you, great grandfather Grana, for coming to the United States. And these are just some pictures of our team. And when we go to green card interviews with our clients, your beneficiaries, and my kids, and we have a friendly office puppy named Willie who comes in here and is a superhero and helps us out with like when we get RFE responses, requests for evidence. Super proud of the network that we're part of and the clients we support here in Silicon Valley. I love meeting brilliant people from all around the world. And we work with a number of startups that have been invested in by very distinguished and high-profile investment companies, VCs such as Sequoia and SoftBank. One of our clients just received $500 million Series D round led by SoftBank, so we're super excited for them. We've helped many employees from distinguished backgrounds start their own companies, and we've also been in the news a lot. I'm a writer for TechCrunch, and I'm really excited because next week we're going to be officially announcing a newspaper advice column in the lines of Dear Abby, which was like the dating advice thing from the 90s in the newspapers. So I think it's going to be called Dear Sophie. There's some trademark things we have to work out. And then you can write in with your immigration questions and I'll be writing answers. So if we can't, we'll try to get to your questions today. And please do, email us and you'll have our contact information if you have any more questions. You can always reach out directly. But if you feel like writing in to TechCrunch and seeing your anonymous question published, you are also welcome to do that. And we won several awards. And most recently, last night, We got an award on the bottom right. We're an officially certified woman-owned business, which is great for companies looking for supplier diversity. And we just won an award last night, actually, as the fastest growing woman-owned business in the Pacific region of the United States. So we're very proud of that as well. Wouldn't be possible without an amazing team, but mostly the team is there so that we can support our clients. Okay, so we're gonna go from the super high level, and we're going to zoom in to different parts of the H-1B process and how it's changing. And then if there's time, I'm going to throw in some extra tidbits about general things that, you know, if you have H-1B candidates working for you, things that are just good to know about the same candidates, other related needs that they may have, things like that. Okay, so if you're on this webinar, you already know that immigration law is complex and you're not alone. There are federal judges who lament in written opinions that this is one of the most complicated types of law, more complicated than tax law. So if you find yourself frustrated and scratching your head, don't worry, you're not alone. It is objectively super complicated. However, you know, if we zoom way out, right, you're either a citizen because you were born in the country or your parents were citizens and they had you somewhere else, or you have a short-term temporary status to be here, like a visa, like an H-1B, or you're a permanent resident and you have a green card. Now, most people think that you have to have a green card, most people think that you have to have a visa in order to get a green card. However, that is not true. That's not the case. So I think the lottery is getting a lot, well, I will tell you that the lottery is going to be a lot cheaper and easier, but I don't know what's going to happen to the selection rate, because if it's easier, demand may increase and supply is fixed. So the acceptance rate or the lottery rate might decrease. So anyway, if you want another way to bring somebody here who's in another country, and you know you want them and need them and they're a critical part of your company's long-term growth, just know that you theoretically could sponsor them for a green card without them ever getting an H-1B, and they don't have to already be working for your company and they don't have to be in the United States. Green cards are for the whole world. In general, most of the people who at your companies you might decide that you want to sponsor for H-1Bs, these people are typically already inside the United States, and they probably came to the country in the last 5-10 years or so as a student in a university, in F1 student status, either obtaining a bachelor's degree or a master's degree or a PhD or sometimes all three. And so those students go through a variety of stages. They come on F1 and at first they can only study. They may be eligible for CPT, curricular practical training, which could be a paid internship related to their coursework during their studies. So you could have an intern with you on CPT before they've graduated. There's also pre-completion and post-completion OPT. Most students go for the post-completion route. It's a 12-month work permit that every university, master's or PhD graduate in the country would receive regardless of their major, and it does allow them to be contractors. So you have some different options at that stage. And then if the student has obtained a degree in a STEM field, so science, technology, engineering, or math, then they would be eligible for an additional 2-year work permit extension called STEM OPT, optional practical training. And for STEM, the employer must be enrolled in the E-Verify system. So if you have any people on OPT and you're at a startup and you want them to convert to STEM OPT, make sure you get registered in E-Verify first. And then usually the hope for all of these individuals is that your company is going to sponsor them for an H-1B, not just once, but every year while they are in OPT and STEM OPT status, thus securing them, hopefully, eventually, an H-1B work visa so they can be employed by you in a professional position. And then the hope after that is that once they're working for you, your company will graciously begin the green card process, which is generally initiated by something called PERM. There's an I-140, and then eventually there could be adjustment of status or consular processing. And then once somebody has had their green card for 5 years, if they so choose, they could apply for US citizenship. So that's kind of like the immigration journey of a person with H-1B in a nutshell. So there's a lot of options for US immigration law. We do have this handy dandy chart that I made in my kitchen one night when my kids were little and I was starting the firm. And it's sort of an overview of a lot of different pathways to the US. It continues on down beyond this screen. But basically, what does it take to qualify for various categories of temporary visas and green cards, and how do you apply, and what's the process, and who can be included? And so we'll be sharing this with everybody who registered for today's webinar as a thank you for participating, and you're welcome to share that with anybody who might find it useful. Okay, so now the time you've all been waiting for. Let's dive into H-1Bs. So what are H-1Bs? I mean, you could be working on them for years in a giant company and very much in the details, but just the structure and where they come from. So the Immigration and Nationality Act defines our country's immigration law scheme. It was passed in 1965, so it's been in effect for several decades. And there's a section of that law that's basically Section H, subsection 1, subsection B, and that's the part that talks about how professional skilled workers can come in limited measure to work at United States companies every year. So that's the origin of why it's called an H-1B visa. So a few basics. It does require that the employer is offering a specialty occupation as a position. So that's not just any like admin role or receptionist role. It needs to be a job that specifically requires a bachelor's degree. And the person, the candidate, must have a bachelor's degree that is relevant to this job. So if they don't, then we have to go in and figure out through an education evaluation or evaluating their work experience, is there any other argument we can make that this person is qualified for this position? But there has to be that nexus, that connection. And then another thing to keep in mind is that the wage floor is regulated, and that basically comes from some Department of Labor statistics that tell you what is the prevailing wage in the area for this type of position and for the level that the individual candidate is going to be working at. So all of these things come together in the H-1B petition. And then another really critical thing about it is that Congress put a cap, a limit on the number of H-1Bs that are available every year. So there are 65,000 H-1Bs available every year for people anywhere in the world, regardless of where they live or regardless of where they went to school. And then there's a special additional set aside of 20,000 additional more H-1Bs that are allotted to people who got their master's degrees or PhDs in the United States. Now, over the last several years, about 150 to 210,000 people or so have applied every year for this lottery. And so, therefore, we have the need for a random lottery system to determine which of those candidates are actually going to get the available visas. So over the last several years, most candidates have had about a 25 to 35% chance of being selected. This year, in 2019, in April, the government did change the order of the lottery around, giving the people with advanced US degrees 2 bites at the apple, essentially. So we saw that the people we represented who had master's degrees and PhDs had more like an 80% chance of being selected rather than a 25 or 30% chance. So if you have a choice between 2 candidates, both require H-1B sponsorship, you're more likely to retain them longer if they have an advanced US degree. So I just thought this was interesting. Most people who are in the United States on H-1B do come from India. That's about 55% of the H-1Bs, individuals who currently have H-1Bs. About a third, or 35%, were born in China, and about 10% were born in Europe. And of course, you know, there are more as well from other countries, but we rounded to make the graphic easier to read. So now more H-1B overview basics, timing. Okay, so the allotment for the 65,000 and the 20,000 is based on each federal government fiscal year. And the federal government fiscal year starts October 1st and runs until September 30th. So 2 months ago, on October 1st, 2019, the federal government started fiscal year 2020. And so in April, when the next lottery happens, that will be called fiscal year 2021. And the people who get H-1Bs in that lottery will be able to start on October 1st, 2020. So the timing is, can be tongue-tying to talk about sometimes. An H-1B is typically maxed out when the person has spent 6 years in the United States in that status. A single H-1B can be approved for up to 3 years at a time. Somebody can transfer or recapture time in order to cobble together the 6 years, and that could be attributed to multiple employers. Now, cap gap is an important consideration for timing if you have any students who are at the end of their OPT and they're not eligible for STEM OPT, or if they are in their last year of STEM OPT. And so basically the way cap gap works is if the person is in OPT or STEM OPT when the lottery happens, then that status is expiring sometime between the lottery and October 1st when the H-1B starts. This cap gap regulation allows those candidates to continue living in the United States and working for you while they are waiting to get their H-1Bs. So it's very useful. However, occasionally over the last couple years, when premium processing, which makes H-1Bs go fast, when the government has flipped the switch for that on and off and on and off, and premium processing in some years was not available before October 1st, there were some H-1Bs petitions where the government lagged in their adjudication. They didn't make a decision until after October 1st. What could those candidates do? Well, they were allowed to stay in the United States, but they had to stop working for the company. So they went on like an unpaid leave of absence while they were waiting for the H-1B to kick in. The exception to the 6-year limit for H-1Bs is a law called AC-21, and basically you just want to make sure that you get the green card process going for anybody before the start of their 6th and final year of H-1B status, and then as long as their green card is still in process, they're allowed to keep renewing the H-1B beyond 6 years so that they can stay here while they're waiting for the green card. Okay, so we covered this. The changes from this year were that now people with master's degrees and PhDs from the United States get 2 bites at the apple, and they have a higher chance of being selected in the lottery. And now looking ahead, there are all of these new changes as well. And that's really the point and the heart and soul of this webinar today. And so now that we've covered all this preliminary background information to make sure we're all on the same page, we're going to dive in to a lot more of the details on this. And several of them are very, very recently released, and there's still open questions, and we'll probably have a couple follow-up webinars to this one in Q1 of 2020 to talk about continuing changes, new developments as they continue to arise. So just to set the stage, if you're brand new to H-1Bs, you might want to know about how it was done in the past, because if there's any problems to the new system, that's probably what we would revert to. So historically, it's completely paper-based. You try to get all the H-1Bs to the government in the first 5 business days of April. So, we would start in November or December or January, and the companies would decide who they wanted to invest the legal fees in order to do these substantial petitions, and we would have to get all of the evidence and do all of the forms, and then the companies would put the candidates into the lottery, and then it was a toss-up, like, all right, I just spent all this money on my lawyer. Is this person actually going to be selected? I don't even know. So I'm really happy for companies, especially small businesses and startups, because the changes, I think, will actually make this so much more palatable to companies to be willing to engage in this process. So high level, there's going to be this new electronic registration system. The government will charge $10 for one person to be put into the lottery, so a very nominal fee. And after the selection process happens, that is when we will actually prepare the petitions and, well, maybe we can talk about that more, but that's when you're actually going to submit the petitions and pay the government filing fees, which are typically in the neighborhood of like $2,000 to $5,000, depending on whether you use premium processing, how big the company is, and how many other employees currently have H or L status working for the companies. So we don't yet quite have access to the system, but I will be showing you a preview and some screenshots of what it's going to look like. There has been some protest and confusion in the immigration advocate community about, like, what are you doing, government? And why don't we have more information already? And is this system going to crash? We don't know. But there's a lot we do know, and so let's go into that. So, so there is going to be an electronic registration system with USCIS. I'm very excited that they have developed this for the Google Chrome browser, but you have your choice of several browsers. So basically, you're going to be creating a login on this system. You're also going to be using pay.gov to be able to pay the $10 per beneficiary fee. And I'm happy that you don't need to have a pay.gov account in order to pay the fee. They accept checking account information, savings accounts, as well as debit cards and credit cards. So that's how that will happen. And then this is the brand new part of this presentation that I didn't have access to a couple of weeks ago. And so this is what I'm really excited to show is, what is this sign up form actually going to look like for the lottery? So basically, to go through this, any company can submit as many beneficiaries as it wants, and you can connect them to your law firm, or your law firm can do it for you. We're already starting to gather our clients' information so that we know that nobody's going to slip through the cracks on this. It's going to be a 14-day registration period, and then at the end of the 14 days, the government will either say, "Hey, we didn't fill all 85,000 H-1B slots, so now it's time to submit your petition," or they will say, "Yeah, there were more applicants than we have spots for. We conducted a lottery, and you are either you either have a chance, you're on the wait list, or you've been rejected." So all of that will happen digitally, and I'm so grateful for that. I mean, I can't even imagine the volume of paper that like 130,000 rejected H-1B petitions have taken up, all of that FedExing, and we didn't get the rejection notices for applicants who didn't make it sometimes until June or even July. So this is going to be such a better system, assuming it works and it doesn't have bugs and it doesn't crash. So, okay, so that's how that's going to work. And then at the end, after all of that, right, then we'll submit the I-129 petition. Okay, so in order to qualify, you should be an employer, you should have a registered company, we'll need the federal taxpayer employer identification number from the SS4 letter if you're in an early stage startup, and we have to get you run through the Department of Labor system to get the LCA as well. And it's important to have an employer-employee relationship. There's also an option for agents. You can see kind of towards the lower half over here of the screen. An individual or company in business as an agent may file a registration for people who are traditionally self-employed or workers who use agents to arrange short-term employment on their behalf with numerous employers, and in cases where a foreign employer authorizes the agent to act on its behalf. So this is new to me, and this is very exciting, and I actually wonder if this is going to improve the entire process for consulting companies who lease out contractors to do IT consulting or other types of contracting work at third-party companies. This could potentially be a big boost for them, as well as for startup founders who want to run their companies. So lots of little gems in here. So other things to note, this is just a standard like government notices, but I am happy about the autosave feature that they have built into this, so that if your browser crashes or something, you're still going to be able to have your responses. And then here's a preview of the questions that they are actually going to ask. So legal name of the company, what is the DBA of the company, or does it not have one? What is the EIN number of the company? Or if it's an agent, then what is that person's social security number or ITIN number? And what is the address? And then as we move forward, they want to know who on behalf of the company is creating this account. What is their name? What is your title? And what is your phone number and email address? Then they want to see which beneficiaries you're adding. And it says you may submit as many beneficiaries as you would like for one registrant or application per registration. And then there's this function to keep adding beneficiaries. And so now for each beneficiary, I don't know how well you guys can see it, so I will just keep reading through the questions for you. For the beneficiaries, they would like to know the full legal name of the person, their sex. They would like to know if the person goes into the special cap, for the master's cap, if they have a master's or higher PhD degree from a US institution. They like to know the date of birth. And additionally, they would like to know the person's country of citizenship and passport number. So this is really interesting to me to analyze this because it means that without passing a new law, they are essentially circumventing the prior ability, which you could say some people may have abused, of one company to sponsor a single candidate for several distinct job positions. So historically, some people have tried to get more chances in the lottery by companies submitting multiple H-1Bs for one person. And so one of the things I was curious about with this new system is, would they make you state a job title in advance of being in this lottery? And here they're not doing it. So it basically means that companies are no longer going to be able to submit 2 H-1B petitions for one person. So very interesting change, because that was technically legal, but they didn't like it happening, and so they've circumvented it by designing the process in such a way that it can't happen. And then you'll have an option to keep adding more beneficiaries as you go. And then you can see, these are all fake names, but basically you can change the person's information up until the lottery, and you can also delete them from being considered. Okay, so yeah, that's like the super exciting preview of what that system is actually going to look like. And then it begs the question of, okay, what can we do now to prepare? And it's a spectrum. Oh, and then the other thing, I think this slide is later, but I want to mention it now. The other thing that's really critical to know is that there's going to be a 90-day window after the lottery during which we will be able to submit the actual I-129 petitions that have been completed for any candidates who were selected. So all of this leads into strategy questions about timing, investment, amount of work you want to do now, compared to the chances that people will be accepted versus how critical they are to the organization, and then how much work you want to leave until the last minute. So it's probably prudent to take these steps because it's super cheap to do. These are no cost to you or the candidates. And it could save timing when it could save time if there's a scramble in that 90-day preparation window. So it's good for your candidates and your employees if they can just start gathering all of their education documents, their immigration documents, their passport scans, entry stamps, visas, prior I-790C approval notices on petitions, I-20s from school, DS-2019s if they were in any J-1 internship programs, all of that stuff. And if you have any doubt that their degree will fit the job you want to offer them, or if they don't have a degree but they have work experience, we should get those education evaluations done now. Additionally, especially if it's a new company, it's really important to gather this information. You want to make sure you have your FEIN number from the SS4 form. We have to get that validated with the Department of Labor for the LCA part of the process. And it's also really good just to start brainstorming. And if you're at a bigger company, you already have your standard jobs and job descriptions all figured out. But especially for newer companies, we need an accurate job title. We need a very detailed description of the job duties and what percentage of the time the person is going to be spending on them. And that's a way that we can try to avoid you guys or the petitions getting requests for evidence on the back end. Also just general company material to prove that it's a legitimate company that's doing business, that has the ability to pay the candidates. It could be tax documents, if it's a startup, it could be business plans, marketing materials, statements of work, pitch deck. There's all sorts of things, but you don't need that as much if you have money in your bank account. Another question that we often field in the H-1B preparation process, do you have some time to think about it? Because this won't matter unless the person has been selected and we're preparing. But are we doing a change of status for them, or are we doing consular processing? A change of status would be if they're in the United States and they're on OPT or STEM OPT or something else, or they have cap and they're just gonna stay here until October 1st, and then on October 1st it kicks over to H-1B status. Or, and this is particularly relevant if you have any candidates where frequent international travel is part of their job, or if they have any relatives with health issues where they might need to travel internationally. In some cases, it could be better to just select consular processing from the outset, where that person is going back to another country to actually get their H-1B visa. So this is what I think the timeline might look like based on what we can see from our vantage point right now. And it's truncated, right? So and I put April twice, so I'll have to fix that. But basically, here's the progression. Here we are now. Good to just get organized around this, figure out who your lawyer is going to be if you don't already have one, and decide which employees you're going to be sponsoring in the lottery. This lottery should kick in for 14 days around March or April, but we're waiting for more information about that. But you might be able to create a MyUSCIS account now, so you could attempt to do that, but I haven't tried it yet. So we'll get you more information on that in the next webinar. It's not urgent yet. Then in April, this lottery will happen and you'll get the notification of which of my beneficiaries were selected. And then that will kick off the 90-day window for submitting their petitions. And then I have no idea what will be happening with premium processing next year, or what this will do to their response times. I mean, presumably if they had all of the budget for all of the contractors to deal with all of the rejected applications, hopefully they can put those resources to just adjudicating the petitions in a timely manner instead, and maybe they'll be able to do it earlier. But as always, the earliest possible start date, because of the ways the law are written, will definitely remain being October 1st. So now as I look at this, what it yields me to think about is, okay, 90 days is a really short amount of time for people and law firms around the world to prepare 85,000 comprehensive H-1B petitions. I mean, I think it can be done, but we'll all have to think about resources to do that with. And then additionally, if you want faster processing, but don't necessarily want to pay for premium processing, or you just want to get it in sooner, maybe if there's any candidates who you definitely want to put resources into, whether they get selected or not, maybe it's worth engaging your attorney to prepare the entire H-1B petition in advance of the lottery, just so if you get that selection notice, it's like, all right, here's the petition, we're just mailing it in, FedExing it in the next day, first in line, don't need to worry about it, already done. So I guess that's a trade-off for you guys with resources about how much do you want the person, how critical are they, and are you willing to take the risk that you would spend the money and then not have the person be selected. Probably for smaller companies, it's not worth it. Maybe bigger companies have some personnel, key personnel for which that would be worthwhile. So still, these are the questions that I've gathered to date that I don't know the answers to. I think it's going to be open for 14 days, but I'm not sure exactly when. And I'm not, yeah, so I don't know if it's going to be like April 1st to April 14th or something else. They launched a lottery earlier this year for another type of temporary visa called an H-1B, which is for like construction workers, for example. And that had a lot of bugs and crashing. So I really hope they got a lot of this sorted out during that mini experiment. But I would just advise you to be super prepared and do it at the beginning in case there are any issues. There will be time to resolve them. And I don't know if premium processing will continue to be available or not. Okay. Well, I want to save some time for questions. So whoever has questions, please start writing them into the Zoom question and answer box so that I can start reading them. In the meantime, I'm going to just touch a little bit on green cards for people in H-1B status, because that's always the next step, right? It's like, yay, I got selected in the lottery. Okay, so when are you going to do my green card for me? So that's typically how it goes. So just so you know, green cards are in 4 main categories, kind of, or 3, depending on how you want to think about it. There's a lottery for people from countries with low levels of immigration. There's employment, which includes self-sponsorship and investment, and then people can get green cards through family members. So just to hone in on the business green card pathways, most companies typically sponsor people in the EB2 category or the EB3 category, and EB just means employment-based in the green card scheme. So EB2 is for people with advanced degrees, EB3 is for people who are considered skilled workers, for example, people with bachelor's degrees, and these typically require the perm process where you're testing the labor market to figure out if there are any Americans who are equally suited to do the job, because under law, they are required to have the opportunity to take the job first. And then there's also the EB1 category, which never requires perm, is earlier in line, and could be sponsored by a company as well. So that includes EB1 for extraordinary ability, EB1B for researchers, EB1C for, this is like an L visa for intercompany transferees. If you want to avoid perm, but the person doesn't qualify for any of the EB1 categories, you could do EB2 national interest waiver for somebody with a master's degree or who is outstanding, and basically say like, hey, they're so good, we don't have to test the labor market. And I see that the questions are starting to come, so thank you so much. Type a few more. I just have a couple more slides and then I will dive into answering your questions. Thank you so much. Then just a little bit of the other trends that we're seeing. And so we try to do everything possible at the outset for compliance to avoid these situations from arising and to do a really good job on initial H-1B petitions and just I-129s in general, but to avoid requests for evidence. But basically, a few years ago, there was this executive order called extreme vetting. And so they're looking critically at every application and petition, even extensions, and also at the consulates. You'll see that, some candidates are in processing for even a couple months before they can get their visa in India or China, especially people working with, in the semiconductor industry with chips and hardware. There's also been some I-9 audits and business raids. Now, it's not just I-9s they can look at. They could also look at any audit files, like for the H-1B, for example, the public access folder. So when you're approaching this whole world of H-1Bs and sponsorship, you know, there's a lot of, you're not just investing your money, you're also investing your time. And so these are the things to consider. There could be a request for evidence. You may need an education evaluation, which can be $100 or, you know, in the low hundreds of dollars. Documents may need to be translated. There's the government filing fees. There's, you know, will premium processing be on or off? What's the prevailing wage? Are you going to be paying the person enough? Legal fees. I mean, the way we are doing it is just for the H-1B lottery, we're basically just charging a nominal small fee for a couple hours of attorney time to just have some conversations with you about, is this person even eligible and what job might we want to be positioning them for? And then we'll track it all and handle putting that person into the lottery. And then we're not going to charge the balance of our H-1B fee until after the person has already been selected and we're preparing work for the bulk of the petition. Or, as I was talking about before, if we decide to make the investment before the lottery, we could do that as well. But really the biggest thing is your time, because these petitions, especially if there is a request for evidence, which, as I said, we do try to avoid, but it can require substantial time from people working at companies to gather all of the required documents to give to the government. So, okay, great. So this is our contact information. You are welcome to reach out to us if you have any questions. We would be more than happy to support you. You can mention that you attended today's webinar. And as I said, we will be following up with everybody who registered with our infographic about the different visa types, and also some of the TechCrunch articles I've published that are behind the Extra Crunch paywall. We have those in PDF form, and so we'll be happy to share that with everybody as well. And so I have several questions. That's fantastic. Thank you so much. Now, let's see. Okay, first question comes to us from Bianca. Thank you for your question, Bianca. She asks, do requests for evidence often mean denials? That's a great question, and I think it depends on your lawyer or your industry. So in the consulting world, it has been very difficult to get H-1Bs approved. And so an RFE in that scenario could mean there's a higher chance of a denial. And then the reason I say it depends on your lawyer is because it matters, you know, how much thought and strategy went into preparing this H-1B petition from the beginning. Is it the right job code? Does that line up with the job you're doing? Have all the legal grounds for these visas actually been met? Because we occasionally do get requests for evidence, but we win almost all of them when we respond. So I think it just boils down to how thorough and strategic everybody is at the beginning of the case to plan it out well. So thank you so much for your question, Bianca. And our next question says, my bachelor's degree is unrelated to the occupation. Does this become a problem? So the answer to this is maybe. This is something to talk with your employer about, to really craft the right job title and the right job description. We should also take a look at your prior work experience, and if you have any educational experience in a field related to the job, because it is possible to get education and work experience evaluations that could show and prove that what you've done is equivalent to having a bachelor's degree in the appropriate field. So thank you for that question. Now, another question is, I've heard that an H-1B visa job must be a specialized occupation. What does it mean, the term specialized occupation? So, wonderful question, and the answer is that this is something written in the law that a lot of court and agency decisions have interpreted legally. So it's complex, but basically it means a professional job that requires at least the equivalent of a bachelor's degree in a related field, not administrative or clerical work. So that is that one. Now we have another question, which is, when should we initiate a case with Alcorn for an H-1B who we want to sponsor in the lottery? Right now, please. We don't really know how this is all going to shake out with the timing, but we do know that we can give you more time and attention if you start now. So if you're sure about somebody, please just don't hesitate to reach out to us with the contact information on the screen. We would be delighted to get started and supporting you on that right now. Another question is, thank you for that. Another question is, once you get a request for evidence, if it is rejected or denied, are there appeals that can take place? And if yes, how common is the appeal to get approved? So yes, there technically is, there are options. You could have your attorney file a motion to reopen, a motion to reconsider, or an appeal. Sadly, all of those things take a year or more, and they don't allow the candidate to stay in the United States while those are pending. So I might consider this for somebody who is at the very beginning of OPT and they have STEM OPT coming, but if they're already on CAP-GAP, it's not really a fix. I mean, they could go work remotely for a year and come back, or maybe there's another way. But litigation is happening more and more. And so, I mean, that's like literally suing the Department of Homeland Security and USCIS in federal district court, saying that they were arbitrary and capricious in the way they decided this H-1B. And so that is happening more and more. It's quite an investment of time and money, but it could be good to make a point and to really, help that one person. So one more question, and then we're going to be wrapping up. The question is, if I want to start my own business, how can I transfer from a different business visa to an H-1B? So typically what I tell people is, if this is going to be a startup, you should get funding, like at least a couple $100,000 in the corporate bank account, and you should have an independent board of directors who is your employer, who can oversee you and monitor your employment at the company. I'm really curious to explore this new agent option for H-1Bs that seems to be indicated by this new system, because maybe you could be self-employed in that aspect if you had an agent, and then who's going to be an agent. So lots of questions there, but bottom line is, if you're at an early stage startup and you're a founder, all this is possible. It could run in parallel with your other visa at your other company, and then we could talk about the timing for how and when to switch it. So that takes us just about to the hour, and I will just reiterate what a pleasure it's been to be sharing this information with all of you today. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your curiosity. We're all just figuring it out together and making progress as we do. You guys are welcome to email us or call us at any time. We would love to support you. Please don't hesitate to reach out, and you can expect to get an email from our team with the materials that we discussed. So a PDF of the slide deck, the options chart, and also some of the extra crunch articles. So I want to thank you all for your participation. My name is Sophie Alcorn. I'm the founder of Alcorn Immigration Law, and we'd love to keep in touch. So you can follow us on social media. We're on Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram. And we hope you are staying warm and dry if you're in the Northern Hemisphere right now, as it's winter. And we wish you all a very happy holiday season, and we look forward to keeping in touch. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day. Bye.